Welcome to Lab 5. Up to this point, you've learned how to download a project from GitHub and then modify the Dockerfile to create a custom image. Now we will explore how to create our own Dockerfile to build and deploy our own Docker image. In this first video, we will learn how to create a basic Docker file. This page contains some of the Dockerfile elements that we will use during our lab. For part 1, we will use cmd. This allows us to execute a specific command within the container when it first runs. We will also use from to define the base image for our own custom image. For 5.1, we want to write a basic Dockerfile to build a simple image. This task is foundational for you being able to build your own more complex images later on, or to be able to customize advanced Docker files that you find on GitHub. The first thing that we will do is learn how to write a Dockerfile and then build that to create our image. We need to make a new directory. We will call it Alpine Demo because we will be using the Alpine Linux distribution. And let's create our Dockerfile. Our Dockerfile will be simple. We will have a from statement that says this is from the latest version of Alpine. We will update all of the packages. We will add a text editor and we will add curl for testing. So let's copy this. Edit our Dockerfile. Paste it here. This Dockerfile has two commands, really one command, but the first one is the base image that we're going to use, and then we have one single command that runs these three separate subcommands, I guess we can say. We just concatenate them together. It's more efficient if we do one single run command. Let's save and exit. We will now build the Docker image using Docker build. We can view our images that we already have, so we can see the new ones that we create. So Docker build -t gives it the name of the image and the tag. We can see here that we have several images and tags. For example, WordPress is the image and Apache is the tag. For this one, we will call it Alpine Demo, and we'll give it the tag of test. We need to specify the dot at the end of it. Now that it's built, let's look at our images. And you'll see it right here. Alpine Demo Test. It used the Alpine image that we defined in our Docker file from Alpine latest. We can run this image as a container, but it's not going to do anything. This is just basically a simple compile. Now let's edit our Dockerfile and add something to it so that it produces some type of output. Let's add the cmd command for date. So every time it runs, it will print the date. So we'll use cmd date. So save and exit. This will do the same thing as running this command here, date. This Dockerfile is operating as a standalone application. We can use Docker images as an application that does something and then they exit, or we can run them in daemon mode so they start and continue to run. There's two different types of applications for them. So now we need to rebuild. We do the same command. It will replace this image with the new one that we build now. So you can see it included a new step, step 3, build. And there's the new image created 11 seconds ago. Now let's run this image as a container so we can see its output. Docker run, give it the name of the image and the tag. It's going to start the container and then print the date. If we look at the running containers, we won't see any because it ran and then exited, but it still exists. So we can remove it. By copying the container ID. We can also run a container using this image and obtain a shell prompt. So let's do that right now. Docker run, we need to add 2 flags to it. The interactive mode and then T to specify a terminal. Then we specify the image and the tag. Now we need to give it the shell to run. Because this is Alpine Linux, we'll just use sh. And I forgot to put test on it. It told me the image did not exist. Now we are inside of our container. We can run commands. For example, who am I? And the date. And look at the IP address, which will be different than the one on our host VPS. If we want to know which operating system and distribution this is, we can look at that information. It tells us that we are running the Alpine Linux distribution version 3.12. Now we can exit our container and return back to our host VPS. And if we want to see the distribution of our host DPS, we can run the same command here, and it will tell us that we are running Ubuntu 18.04. The container started and exited, so we have to remove it again. We could exit it using the ID or also the name. We can do the name this time. This name is an auto-generated name. It would be more convenient if we were to use our own name so that we can always identify the containers. Docker has a name flag. So let's modify our docker run command to include that. I usually put it first in the list. So name, we will call it Alpine Demo. And again, we are going to enter the shell, but we don't need to do that. Now our stop containers will show Alpine Demo. We can now remove our containers using our own name. So we can start it again to do something, to execute whatever task we want to do. Then we can remove it using the same name. This video showed how to create a very simple Docker file using Alpine latest. Then to build the Docker file into a Docker image called Alpine Demo Test. How to run our new Docker image as a container. Lastly, we looked at how we can obtain a shell prompt in a running Docker container.